I thought couples therapy was saving my marriage. Turns out my husband was using it to build a case against me. For most of last year, I genuinely believed my marriage was falling apart because of me. That's what my husband told me anyway. Evan and I had been together for 11 years, married for 7. We met in our early 20s, grew up together, built routines, inside jokes, a whole life that felt sturdy and permanent. Then something shifted. Evan became distant in small, confusing ways. He stopped reaching for me in bed. Conversations felt rushed, like he had somewhere better to be. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd sigh and say things like, "You've just seemed really checked out lately," or "I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you." I started replaying my behavior in my head. Was I distracted? Too tired? Too emotional? I'd recently taken on more responsibility at work, and the stress was real. Maybe I'd brought it home with me. When I tried to talk things through, Evan would nod sympathetically, then gently redirect the blame back to me. "I just don't feel supported," he'd say, "and I don't think you even notice." I noticed everything. I noticed the late nights, the way his phone never left his side, the sudden interest in his appearance, the new clothes, the gym memberships, the faint unfamiliar scent on his jacket that wasn't mine. But I never accused him. I didn't have proof, and more importantly, I didn't trust my own instincts anymore. Evan suggested couples counseling. I felt relieved. Maybe this was salvageable. Maybe we could fix whatever I'd broken. The sessions were brutal. He spoke calmly, thoughtfully, describing how lonely he felt, how he worried about my mental health, how he sometimes felt like my caretaker instead of my partner. I sat there, humiliated, nodding through tears, apologizing for things I wasn't even sure I'd done. The therapist asked if I'd considered taking time off work to focus on myself. Evan squeezed my hand when she said it, like he was proud. I went home from those sessions feeling hollow. That's when I started journaling. Not for revenge, not for evidence, just to keep track of my thoughts because I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I wrote down dates, conversations, how often Evan came home late, how he spoke to me afterward, how he suddenly started asking detailed questions about our finances, our savings, our mortgage. I didn't realize it then, but that notebook would become the most important thing I owned. The night everything changed came quietly. Evan fell asleep on the couch with his laptop still open. I wasn't snooping. I was just trying to shut it down so it wouldn't overheat. An email was open on the screen. The subject line read, "Next steps." I stared at it for a long moment before clicking. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't explicit. It was worse. It was legal. A chain of emails between Evan and a divorce attorney, spanning months. Discussions about asset division, strategy, how to establish a narrative of emotional instability, suggestions about encouraging me to reduce my workload, about documenting my fragility. I sat there in the dark, reading it over and over. That night, I didn't cry. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I didn't confront him. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even change my behavior noticeably. I kept going to counseling. I kept apologizing. I kept letting him think his plan was working. But I stopped journaling for my sanity. I started documenting. I photographed emails. I recorded dates. I quietly requested copies of financial statements. I spoke to a lawyer during my lunch breaks, under the guise of running errands. I learned what mattered, what didn't, and when to move. Evan grew more confident by the day. He talked openly about what separation might look like. He reassured me that he'd take care of me. He had no idea how much I knew. When Evan finally sat me down and told me he wanted a divorce, he looked relieved. "I think this is what's healthiest for you," he said gently. I nodded. I asked for time. I asked if we could keep things friendly. He agreed. 2 weeks later, he was served. The look on his face when he realized I wasn't confused, wasn't fragile, wasn't unprepared. It's something I'll never forget. The emails came out, the counseling manipulation came out, the financial maneuvering came out, my notebook came out. The narrative Evan had built collapsed in a single afternoon. By the end, I kept the house. I kept my retirement. The amicable divorce he'd planned turned into a lesson he hadn't anticipated.